All right, so I'm just going to fess up right before we get this thing started. When I hit the record button to record the intro of this next episode, I forgot to turn the microphone on, and it's coming through the laptop speakers, so I sound like I'm talking in a tin can. Sorry about that. Let's get it going. It's going to be a fun episode with my buddy Mike Bozarth. Let's go. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Holy cow, this is episode number 50. I can't believe that. And actually it makes sense. We've got 2 weeks after this for the rest of the year, and we're doing one episode a week, which I'm not totally sure how I did that because I did miss a week during September. Anyway, guys, welcome to the show. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Town studio up here in snowy North Idaho, in Hayden, Idaho. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. We got a great episode for you this week. A couple things to get to as we start rolling through this stuff. First of all, I want to talk about last week's episode, the elk panel, the series that we did. We had Dirk Durham, Joe Giglia, Chris Rowe on, and we discussed elk and elk hunting and elk habitat and elk behavior and lighted knocks and a little bit of everything. So it was a really fun conversation. The one thing, though, that I noticed, I was going through and I was listening, I was doing the edits. After I record these shows, I sit down and I upload it to my editing software and I listen to it. And what I just try to do is make sure there's no long pauses in between. I tighten up some of those gaps and I try to get rid of some of the ums and ahs and stuff like that. It takes forever though, so I don't focus too hard on that. And plus, I want it to sound pretty authentic as well. But anyway, what I noticed when I was editing it, I was going through and I want to make a correction on something I said because I think that it could be misinterpreted or it sounds bad. It just sounds bad, unrealistic or something. I was talking and I was getting really excited and I was talking about, guys, how I did this and I did that and I called in 17 bulls. And the one correction, that's not inaccurate, but I do want to correct it, and I don't want to call it call-ins because a call-in implies that you brought the bull into bow range and had a pin on him or something, and that wasn't the case. I'd rather call it encounters, and that's where I would make a vocalization towards an elk and I would get responses. And many of those did end up into an actual call-in where I was engaged with the bull and he came in, he was within bow range, and for one reason or another, behind some brush or I blew it or whatever, that I didn't get an arrow in that particular bull. But I just wanted to kind of make that correction. Nobody said anything or anything, but I didn't feel right about how that sounded. And I just want to be totally straight with the audience. It's like the way I said that 17 call-ins of elk last September, I just didn't like the way that sounded. It's not totally, it just paints kind of the wrong picture. They weren't call-ins, they were encounters. And I'm not talking about the lone bull, that's 700 yards away on the different ridge and, that kind of thing that responded. I'm talking about the actual encounters where I either had them coming in silently and I saw them and they'd make little noises, sounds here and there, or full on, argument with a bull elk. You guys that have been there know what I'm talking about when I say full on argument with a bull elk. That's what I was talking about, and those I had 17 encounters, and that comes. The reason I was saying that is because I had so many years of failure as an elk hunter, and trying to call them in, the last 2 seasons have just been absolutely incredible in terms of getting these encounters with bull elk, because I focused and I learned these animals, and I learned how to use my calls, and I learned how the animals think, and how elk, they're behaviorally, how they behave during September. And that's really what made all the difference. And so I just wanted to correct that. Again, it's just my personal thing. I didn't feel right about how that sounded. I did not have 17 call-ins, what I would refer to as a call-in. I had 17 really good elk encounters, though. And that is fair to say. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me on that, and just kind of explaining that. I want to welcome a lot of you new listeners. I've noticed the last few episodes, and I keep meaning to bring this up, but the last few episodes, we've had a lot of new listeners tuning in, tons of new downloads, and I could tell too, because it tells me in my system like where people are downloading from, and you can always tell when you're getting new listeners, because you'll get like these new cities popping up. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that next week on next week's episode, because next week is the 1-year anniversary of the show. And I'm really excited about that. We've had one hell of a year because of you guys. And you new listeners that are here, welcome. The Western Huntsman podcast is designed to keep hunters passionate and engaged in the hunting community and create unity amongst hunters and outdoorsmen in general. And to just help, I always hate using the term educate. I'm not a professor. I'm not here to educate anybody. But I hope that there is an educational value that you get out of this show. And for you new listeners, we don't really have a strict format as to what we talk about on this show. Sometimes we talk about public land and how that relates to being a hunter and an outdoorsman. Sometimes we talk about conservation issues. Sometimes we just tell hunting stories. Sometimes we talk about tips and strategies and technique in the field. How to make you a better elk hunter, or a better deer hunter, or a better bear hunter, or a better duck hunter. Actually, I haven't had any duck experts on. I should probably change that, huh? I know a lot of you guys are big-time waterfowl hunters. I'm not so much. But we talk turkey hunting, anything hunting-wise in the West. That's what we do here, and we do that with a mission, with a purpose, because if you listen to the intro, you notice that we have I talk about the threats that are against us as hunters, between anti-hunting movement type kind of peeps and the politicians that are trying to give our lands away and give them back to private ownership, or not back, but or transfer is a term. They use it's a real sneaky term, transfer the public lands back to the state where they belong, kind of thing. It's really very much a misconception, and is not an honest portrayal of what that means. And so anyways, those are the things that we talk about on this show, because I do want people fired up. I want people passionate about hunting, and the listeners in this audience are passionate, man. And what I appreciate about my audience is you guys are passionate. If you disagree with me, you don't mind calling me out on it, and you don't mind providing the reasons why you disagree with me. And that is totally cool with me. Because let's face it, there's a ton of podcasts out there. There's a lot of radio shows, and it doesn't matter what the topic is, you're not always going to agree with the host. And that's just a fact of life. And I understood that coming into this, going, a year into this now. I understood that. But what I appreciate is I've got people that listen to this podcast that send me emails and messages on social media and stuff like that, where I can read through there, and I know they disagree with me, but they still tune into the show, because that's part of the discussion. We don't always have to agree. And that kind of creates the segue into what I'm about to talk about for spend a few minutes on this topic. And that is, I want to talk about the goals that hunters have and how they differ for each hunter, and why we as hunters need to respect that, because it's been getting ugly out there. It's been getting ugly on like Facebook. You don't see as much of it on Instagram from what I've noticed. But it is definitely out there, especially it's particularly on Facebook. A lot of negativity. People have strong opinions about this and strong opinions about that, and they're not afraid to let each other know. But the one that really bothers me is when somebody hassles another hunter about the size of the deer or elk that they took. I know it's a tired old argument. The whole, if it's brown, it's down versus let them grow another year, whatever. The thing that we have to realize, guys, is first of all, we're not biologists. Second of all, we all have different goals. Some of us have been hunting for a long time, and we have come to a point in our passion for hunting in which we could set higher goals to achieve more mature animals. So don't mistake or don't mistake what I'm trying to say as I'm talking smack about people that only want to shoot big animals, big mature animals. I'm not. I'm absolutely not. I do that too. I really enjoy going after the most mature animal I can find. However, we can never discount the people that are just trying to fill the freezer, or the folks that they go out. The only time they have is a couple of weekends a year. To go after these big, mature. I'm just gonna let's use mule deer for an example. It applies to everybody. It applies to whitetail hunters. It applies to elk hunters. But just for the sake of simplicity, let's go ahead and just stick with mule deer. If you're going after a huge mountain western mule deer, a big mature buck, you need more than a couple of weekends. And that is just fact. Now, does dumb luck sometimes happen? Yeah, obviously. Sometimes these hunters get out of their truck and they walk a few hundred yards and there's a monster mule deer standing there. I know that happens. Has it happened to me? No. I wish it would, but nope, never easy. So the point being that 99% of the time, you're going to need a lot of time and a lot of effort into putting in for these big mature mule deer and getting in after them. Some hunters don't have that luxury. Sometimes all they have is a couple of weekends a year, and really that's all they want. And you know what? That is okay. Now, unless you're in some specific unit that has a problem with the population of whatever game species we're talking about, we need to lay off the folks that go out there and they shoot a spike or a 2-point. What is the problem with that? Because that's been going on for generations. That's something that has been passed down for generations. And so to judge people on the size of that animal and the level of maturity of that animal is really inappropriate, and it really sends the wrong message to future hunters and to people that are against hunting outside of us. We're all hunters, and I get it. There are specific regions throughout the West where there are nuances where we do need to be careful about shooting the younger bucks versus shooting does versus shooting mature bucks, and I have opinions on that as well. So I'm not, don't take that as like some big blanket statement, because it's not. But as a general rule, if it's a legal buck, I just wish people would stop giving each other a hard time. And I think that I know a lot of people that took a nice little buck. Let's say it was a forked horn. You never saw that posted on social media. And it's not that they didn't want to share that experience or their what they consider a trophy in their mind. It's because they were afraid of the repercussions that they were going to get from these people that think that their way of hunting is the only way a hunter should be, and if you don't hunt their way, you're an asshole. That's the kind of stuff we've got to get away from. Anti-hunting organizations eat that up. You don't see anti-hunting organizations ripping each other apart over whatever initiative they're pursuing at the moment, or whatever funding method they've got. No, they don't care. They've all got the same goal. I got news for you guys. And I'm only talking to the people that are jerks to other people about what kind of animal they take. We, as hunters, all have the same goal too. When you strip away the nuances of what your particular personal goals of hunting are, our end game is the same. We want what we consider a trophy in our mind down with a tag on it and our freezer full. That's it. There's no other objective. There's no other objective. Now, I know, again, blanket statement. I know there's hunters out there that they are strictly trophy hunters. They don't even eat the animal they take. They usually donate it and whatever. You know what? If it's legal, I don't care. I'm not going to judge that individual. What I do care about is how we treat each other as hunters, because we have a lot of obstacles in front of us as we move into this next, let's say, decade, because it's 2020. We're going into this next decade, right? And I sure as hell hope 2021 is better than 2020. I've had about enough of elections and coronaviruses and freaking murder hornets and everything else that's taken place this year. You guys know what I mean by that. But the point being is we have a lot of challenges ahead of us as hunters, and we've got to be cognizant of what is ahead of us. What is our future? What does that look like? Why is it important for us to respect each other? You guys, if you've listened to this show at all before, you know how I feel about ragging on people on Facebook. You know how I feel about that. I think it's BS. I have a very, very strict policy, and I haven't always had this, but I recognize that what I was doing was a problem, and I looked like an asshole, and this was years ago. And my new policy, which I adopted, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, when it comes to social media, I say nothing to nobody that I would not say to their face, and I take into account some of the people I'm communicating with. I've never met them, and I probably never will meet them in person. But that remains the same. I say nothing to them that I wouldn't say to their face. And if we're friends on Facebook, you've seen that I can get pretty aggressive with some of my opinions as well. But I'm courteous about it. I wouldn't say professional. I mean, it's social media, right? So it's not like I'm professional. But I'm not just a downright name-calling jerk. I understand that people have different perspectives and different experiences and different objectives and different goals, and all that kind of stuff is super important. And as hunters, we need to respect that about each other. Don't say shit to people that you wouldn't say to their face. I think that is a really good policy to have. Anyways, I hope that all made sense. And I hope that some of you out there that may hear this kind of takes that to heart, because there's one thing that I know, and I know for certain, and that is, if as hunters we are a divided community, we will fail. We will lose this lifestyle that we live, whether it is a lifestyle or just a passive hobby, whether you're just a person that likes to grab a deer tag and go out and, every 5 years you get something, but you don't spend a lot of time, you don't spend a lot of money, or you're a person that lives for hunting season, and you budget great amounts of money for hunting season, and you're extremely committed to this thing, this art we call hunting, or somebody in between. It doesn't matter. We all have the same end game, and we have to be on each other's side. Hunters are my peeps. If you're a hunter listening to this, I'm your peeps. And all the people out there that you see, granted, do they do stupid things sometimes? Yeah, and I want to point one out. Have you guys seen the video where these dudes in this garage have this deer, this buck hanging, and Mr. Mullet Man gets underneath it, and they pour beer down into the cavity of the deer? Like, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 cans of probably Hams. I didn't notice what kind of beer it was, but that makes a difference, right? They pour it down into the cavity of this deer, and Mr. Mullet Man's underneath, as it's coming out of the nasal canal and mouth, is like chugging the beer, and it's bloody, it's all nasty. They're young guys, but that is a stupid thing to put on social media. And here's why. What do you think happens when the marketing director of PETA gets a hold of a video like that? As hunters, we're always trying to portray that we respect our wildlife. We respect the game. We love these animals more than people that don't hunt do. We know more about them. We study them. We respect them. We give them the respect that they deserve once we put the tag on those animals. And then you have that video come out. And the marketing director of PETA is going to take that video and use it to promote their cause against hunting. And I'm using PETA as an example. Another one, or the Center for Biological Diversity. They will eat that video up. What do you think they're going to do with that video? That is marketing dynamite for those kind of organizations. So that video was stupid. It was irresponsible. It makes me sick that somebody would put a video like that on social media for thousands to perhaps millions of people for them to see, and that paints a very, very bad picture. That blows in the darkest, blackest cloud of a shitstorm that we can receive from stuff like that. And I hope that never happens again. I hope those guys, I wish I knew who they were, because I'd get them on the show and I'd say this right to their face. That is the kind of stuff that we've got to find this balance, because you just saw me. I got upset. And those are hunters, and we're supposed to be talking about the unification of hunters and all these things, but some hunters do need to be called out, and it's stuff like that we need to focus on and unify against, because that is what threatens us as hunters. That is the kind of stuff that threatens hunters, not whether or not Bob shot a 2-point versus Billy that shot a 200-inch mule deer. That's the stuff that'll divide us, and it's irrelevant to an individual hunter. Again, regional nuances aside. It's the videos of chugging beer out of a dead deer cavity that destroys us. And those are the things that need to be called out. As hunters, we need to be very much keyed in to what kind of perceptions we are putting off, because as hunters, we are outnumbered, man. I'm telling you right now, I've been running the numbers. We are outnumbered big time. We are not replenishing the hunting ranks that we used to have. It's no longer this widely accepted thing in the United States and Canada. There's a social movement that is seeing it as this barbaric, old-fashioned thing that shouldn't exist anymore, because their opinion is animals shouldn't have to be hunted because they're so soft and they're so weak-minded that they don't understand that the natural progression of mankind has always evolved around hunting and gathering. So this is important stuff. And I don't mean to make this some big long. I hope it's not sounding like a lecture. You guys know I'm probably one of the easiest going podcast hosts you'll ever meet in the community or the hunting space, right? I like jokes. I like to joke around. I got a good sense of humor, but there are things that just, man, they rub me the wrong way. And it's videos like that, pouring the beer down the deer cavity, that piss me off. And it should piss you off too, because it threatens our lifestyle. Those guys are threatening our lifestyle, and they have no clue they're even doing it. That's the kind of stuff that we need to be calling out. So, all right, let's move on from that. One more quick item here, the trivia. Guys, we're going to have a trivia drawing. Many of you have answered. I've had a lot of really good responses on the past trivia questions, and I got kind of an easy one. It's an interesting one. I actually didn't know this until I was reading through a particular book written by a guy that I'm a huge fan of. So anyway, this trivia question is going to be the last one of the year. So next week, on next week's episode, I am going to go ahead and draw a winner for that. And we're going to get you some Western Huntsman swag items. I don't know, merchandise, probably a T-shirt and a cup, something along those lines. And I'm going to send it out to you. But before we do, I have one more question for you. So the trivia question for this week is, how much antler growth do large mule deer see per day during the summer? It's an interesting thing if you think about it. If you sit and think about, like, if you could visualize what takes place in 24 hours, it's crazy. So write into me your answer. How much antler growth do large mule deer see per day during the summer? Write into me at jim@thewesternhuntsman.com. and let me know your answer, and I will enter you in to win the raffle coming up next week on the 1-year anniversary of the release of the Western Huntsman podcast. What a year it's been. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it with our guest today, which he is a fantastic human being, you guys. He's a buddy of mine. His name is Mike Bozarth. And Mike is he has been hunting for several decades. He's got a lot of experience, and he's got great insight as to hunting in different states and tag draws and mule deer and elk and all these things. He's strictly a bow hunter, and that's the only kind of hunting he does anymore. And he had a great season this last year, and we talk a lot about that. But Mike is the kind of hunter that is like he's just everybody's friend. You know, if you're a hunter, he just looks at you like you're already a friend, even if you don't know him. And the goal with episodes like this is I want to get people's perspective that they may not have these platforms to offer their perspective in a lot of cases. You know, a lot of times I've got guys that they have their own podcasts, or they have big YouTube channels, or they have, you know, some way of communicating some of their hunting perspective and tips and strategies and things of that nature. I want to hear from what I would call the average hunter, even though Mike is an above average hunter. He is definitely an above average hunter, and he's got a lot of cool stories. But he's not somebody that you would hear from normally. And those are, if you know somebody like that, if you know somebody that's kind of in the shadows but gets it done every year, they're really good, they love teaching and sharing their knowledge and sharing stories of their hunt, send them my way. Send them my way. Jim@thewesternhuntsman.com is my email address. I'd love to get people like that on the show, because you will be amazed at some of the nuggets you'll get out of guys like this. And Mike is no exception to this. Mike offers a lot of really good information that you guys are going to really benefit from, and I think you're going to like him as much as I do, because I really do. I consider him a friend. He's a great guy. He's a great hunter. He's a great representative of the hunting community, and a lot of us can learn a lot from Mike Bozarth. So without further ado, let's get into it with Mike right now. Guys, have a great week. We'll talk to you next week, and here we go. All right, guys, I'm on the line with Mike Bozarth, and we have been working on trying to connect and get this thing working for a while, and we're on, I guess, third time's a charm, Mike.
That's right. Yeah, it's been a struggle here.
We tried one program, it failed. The other program couldn't hear each other, so I finally just called him on the phone and hooked him up to the soundboard, and here we go.
That's right.
So Mike is somebody I kind of met through social media, and I've been following him and watching his hunts take place, and he's one of those guys that just does a really good job every hunting season. He's super passionate about hunting, and he's got one of those, what I've talked about before, the perspectives of a hunter that you may not hear otherwise. And I think that by not hearing from guys like Mike, we're really missing the boat. And so I'm really excited to have you on, Mike, and I appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, I'm super happy to be here, and I can't think of a better way to do the day.
Yeah, well, I can. If it was hunting, if we can go hunting.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why we picked after hunting season.
That's right. So,
anyway.
Yeah, I'm just kind of in a lull here. I got a few days, but then it's right. Back at it. So looking forward to that. But let's start with, we tried this last time, and the internet was so bad, I couldn't keep any of that. So we need to back up and start with giving everybody a little bit of your background and telling us who you are, and we'll just take the conversation from there.
Okay. Well, I'm 61, so I got a lot of background, so we'll just go over it briefly. So I was raised in Northern California. Mm-hmm. Back when I first moved there, that's back when Reagan was the governor, and it was, a whole completely different state. And I didn't come from a hunting family. I kind of picked it up in my early teens. I learned from hunting magazines and books, and we didn't have the internet or any of that stuff. So
When you say you picked it up in your teens, what triggered that? Were you just kind of somewhere and saw a hunting magazine, or is it something you'd seen on TV, or like what kind of influenced you to get into hunting?
I think I was born with it because, though I didn't come from a hunting family, we were a shooting family and a fishing family, and we were always outdoors camping and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like when my dad and I would take these trips places, and he'd have his 22, and I'd see a rabbit, and the first thing I'd say is shoot it. Right? And he's looking at me like, why do you want to shoot it? So we can eat it. And I'm just a little guy, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just part of me, and then he passed away when I was fairly young, and so from there I just took it on my own, and I picked up trapping, and I lived in the country, and I had neighbors and let me trap their property and the creeks, and I would help out, with nuisance animals and the chickens and stuff like that for everybody. And it was just I think it was just part of me when I grew up.
Wow. Did you have a mentor?
I guess at that early age, the only real mentor I would say was the neighbor that let me trap on his place, and he took me horseback deer hunting when I was like 15.
In Northern California?
Northern California, yeah, up in the High Sierras. And that was the experience right there, I think, that just stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was a great old guy, and he, took this neighbor kid along with him, and that's kind of stuck with me for a really long time.
How old were you when that happened?
I was probably 15.
15 or so?
Yeah.
And so you grew up in Northern California and hunting, fishing, trapping, shooting, and then at some point pick it up from there. Just kind of pick it up from there.
So later on, I moved up to very northeast California, and up there was, where I grew up was heavy timber and thick, and the foothills of Northern California, old logging and mining district. So when I was about 20, I moved up to northeastern California, and up there was the big mule deer and the wide open spaces, and very similar to I'd say northwestern Nevada. Mm-hmm. And it's just a small town. The whole county, I think, had 9,000 people in the whole county, and it was just, I took it from there, ended up working on a ranch for, quite a few years. And then I got a job at a gold mine in Nevada, and I ended up over there. And so pretty much from then on, I worked in mining. To back up a little bit, that we talked about last time was that somewhere in those teens, I picked up a guitar.
Yeah. We got to hit that.
so there was this change for a while from hunting and fishing and trapping to music. And so I kind of followed that along. I was going to be a rock star or whatever. And then when I moved up there, I found, well, there's no business in that up here. And so I got in this little country band, and we played all the, the Ducks Unlimited dinners, the Fireman's Crab feeds, all the, all that kind of stuff. And had a really good time until I got married, and then we just, it just didn't work that way anymore. And so we didn't make any money, but we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, but, not a lot of money in that, is there? When you start buying microphones and speakers and
amps and all that stuff, and it was it's a long time ago. It was in the 80s, and things were a lot different. And as well as I do, you're a musician. Musicians are kind of finicky people, and they're, when it became more work than fun, that's when I shifted gears. And
you're so right. I used to relate it this way. It was like people would be like, "Whoa, what's it like having a band?" And I'd be like, I have a 4-piece band, and it's like having 3 girlfriends, and they're very creative people. and so they're very emotional. And so the bass player would call me up, and he'd bitch about the guitar player doing this, and the guitar player would call me 10 minutes later and bitch about the bass player doing this. The drummer, all he cared about was taking Jack Daniels shots, and he was good. But for some reason, the bass and guitar players, man, there was a lot of drama.
Oh boy, and that's what just steered me away from it, and it was probably lack of talent too, but
me too.
but but it was fun, and I got some very talented daughters. I can't even compare to their abilities as vocalists and musicians, and in that I'm considered a success. Because they're very good and they're passionate about it, and they have families and everything like the rest of us.
Are they playing in bands and getting out there doing gigs and stuff?
I got one daughter who has recorded some of her own music, and it's on Apple Music or iTunes or one of those. She's done some solo stuff like that, yeah, and she's really good. And my oldest daughter, she lives in Washington, but when we get together that we really, we play. And we played some, talent shows and, stuff like that. All three of us together, a couple of years ago. And that was so much fun.
I'll bet.
Stuff like that, and is what I keep my music for now. Just trying to make it work is not,
That's basically what I love, playing around a campfire and horsing around with it. I wrote a funny song. Now the kids need to put your earmuffs on, but I wrote a funny song for elk camp around the fire with my buddies, and it's called "She Don't Feel Like My Sister When I Kiss Her." You think me and you can pick that up and throw a duet on it?
That sounds like something that'd be kind of fun.
It's real bluegrassy hillbilly sounding. I love it.
That's my stuff right there.
Me too, man. So you so you had the band going, and you kind of shifted into this mining career, and that's kind of where we backtracked a little bit, and that took you to Nevada, huh?
Yeah, that took me to Nevada. I ended up back to California for a little bit, but pretty much it's been Nevada, working in Nevada in the mines over there for. I did do some, when it kind of dropped off, I did some construction, built houses and heavy equipment and stuff like that for a while. But then that was kind of going south, and so I got back into mining. I think it was around 2010, and I've been back ever since. And it's provided a great living. It's I've kind of always been one of those tramp distance miners. I've lived in one place and work in another, and
yeah, because you're in Idaho now, and you drive all the way over back to Nevada for work, right?
Yeah. So I work out of Winnemucca there, and I travel back and forth on days off. I have a place I stay with one of my sons who's also in the mining industry, and another buddy. So we share a place there.
Oh, nice.
And then on the days off, and part of it is the schedule's great. I work on 4 or 5 on, then I'm off for 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So
that makes it nice for a hunting season.
Yeah, I worked 4 days this week, and I'm off for 5. So
sweet.
That works good, and yeah, especially for hunting season, because come September, if I do it just right, I can take 4 off and get 14, and so that seldom works that way, but it's always my plan.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's a critical element to success is time in the field, and that's really what can make or break a hunter. So that's ideal, man. I need a job like that.
It's pretty sweet. Don't get me wrong, it's taxing because they're 12.5-hour days, and it's a long week. Don't get me wrong, and you're working days and nights, and yeah. But
what brought you to Idaho?
I would have to say it's like been my dream state since probably around 1980, when I had a buddy of mine that I was working with, and all he ever talked about was Idaho. Right? All this hunting and fishing and all this stuff is so great in Idaho, And then later on, I ended up meeting some friends, and I stayed up in Emmett for a while, and that worked out. I was like, holy mackerel, I'm going to end up here someday. But I was still the family thing and all that stuff where I was at, and so it's always just been a plan, and so it just eventually came together. I know I haven't been here that long, but I've been coming up here hunting for a lot of years, and it's just, to me, it's home.
Yeah, for sure. That is, I think for a lot of people, Idaho is just home. Whether you're from here originally or whatever, it's just there's a sense of homeness to Idaho, and I don't care what part of the state you're in, except for Pocatello. Man, it's just barren down there. What are you guys doing down there?
Yeah, but and Nevada's nice, right?
Yeah, Nevada's all right.
It has its own beauty and own benefits, and California's a beautiful state. It's just I can't do the politics, and they've completely destroyed all the what it used to be when I was a kid, and so of course Idaho is like the last man standing, and unfortunately I realized that everybody thinks that.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely exploding growth-wise, but what do you mean by it's the last man standing?
As far as the values and the way of life.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize that maybe Montana and Wyoming still share some of that too, but in my eyes, it's just like, it's the last frontier sort of. I always told myself I was just going to keep moving north.
Yeah. Right. Man, I've only got I can't go much further north or I'll end up in Canada.
Yeah, you're about as far as you can go and still be in the States.
Well, I have a little while. You got Sandpoint and Bonner's Ferry up north of me, but other than that, it doesn't take very long to get to Canada from my place.
Yeah, you're not too far out of Lewiston, are you?
I'm it's exactly 2 hours to Lewiston from my place. I'm north, just outside of Coeur d'Alene a little bit.
I was up there last winter.
Oh, were you?
In my wolf certification class.
I was down in Lewiston last week looking at a roof at the paper mill that makes that whole valley smell like freaking what it smells like, And so
it smells like the towns that I grew up in used to smell from the lumber mills.
Yeah, the lumber mills, and then but you got that big Clearwater Paper Company there, and it's pretty stinky. If it weren't for that, I'd consider living in Lewiston because it's a good central location, and they don't get that much snow. They're down lower elevation, you drop off that high the Palouse there and drop down into Lewiston, and it's pretty nice. They get like 1 week of snow each winter, which would be really nice because I get sick of snow, man. I'm getting too old for it.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
So, and what part of Idaho are you in now?
I'm out in Payette.
I want to talk about a little bit, and we started talking about this last time when the internet failed us. I want to talk a little bit about the Idaho tag situation versus living in Nevada and that tag situation. Can you kind of describe that and talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Nevada, basically anything bigger than a coyote you have to draw for. Deer, antelope.
There's no over the counter, right?
There's no over the counter. So, and they have a point system. I believe it's just called a straight point system. There's a bonus point system. There's no preference points, so it's not all split up into these different things. Mm-hmm. But it's just a bonus point system. If you apply for a tag and you don't get it, you get a bonus point. Or you can just buy the point. And so it pretty much takes and you have to, you apply for a cow or a bull. So let's just use elk, for example. Mm-hmm. You have to apply for a cow or a bull. Now, when I first started hunting elk in Nevada, you could only apply for one or the other. You couldn't even buy a point for the other. And so when I first got interested in hunting elk, it was like, well, do I want to hunt elk or do I want to wait 7 or 8 years or more for a bull tag? Well, I want to hunt elk. So I started applying for these cow tags, and you could, at the time, you could draw them fairly easily because usually the only people that were at the time that were applying for cow tags were on their waiting period from a bull tag. So at the time, if you didn't harvest, you had to wait 5 years. If you did harvest, you had to wait 10. Now I believe it's 7 and 7. Either way, you got to wait 7 years from the time you draw a tag till you can apply for a bull tag again.
Jeez.
So the demand for the archery cow tags wasn't that great, and so 3 years in a row I drew archery cow tags, and I got super lucky the very first year, and it took me all season, but I got my first elk, and then of course I'm hooked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nevada doesn't do the archery hunter any favors as far as that cow season opens August 1st. And then the bulls start opening around the 16th. And so you're hunting mid-August for bulls, and earlier than that for cows. So you're not getting
I think Utah's like that too.
Yeah, I believe Utah is similar.
Mm-hmm.
But so they're, it's all spot and stock, sit on water, whatever it is. And you might catch some of the premium units for bulls start like the 25th or 6th of August. Don't quote me on it. And then they go into September a little ways. So you might catch some rut action on that. And then the muzzleloaders start up. If you're a muzzleloader hunter, you're catching peak rut.
Gotcha.
And that's a big difference. Of course, Idaho is really friendly to the archery hunter. We start off on the 30th and we have a whole month. And their seasons in Nevada are generally 2 weeks.
So, like, essentially, if you're an elk hunter living in Nevada, you can basically, you're not going every year.
Yeah, you're not going, especially, for bulls, you can only,
every 7 years or whatever, yeah.
Every 7 years, and that's just before you start applying.
What about deer?
Right? Deer's a little easier. Now, it depends on where you want to go. Some of the higher demand units are a little harder to draw. But you could, if you pick and choose and you're not real picky about where you go, an Nevada archery tag for residents and non-residents is attainable, just about every year.
Gotcha.
I was pretty lucky about drawing a deer tag. Now, if you want to go like on the eastern part of Nevada or Ely or something like that, you might wait a couple years for a deer tag. But I'm just speaking archery because that's my only really.
Yeah, you basically only hunt archery, don't you?
Oh yeah, I love it. I can't think of anything else. I've hunted rifle and I've killed some nice deer in California with a rifle. And I tell you what, when you got an elk walking, a bull elk coming up to 8 yards at you, you're not going to hunt any other way.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's just something about it, man. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So that kind of leads into the discussion of, this. There's a lot of talk, especially with all the fuss and feathers that Idaho Fish and Game has created with non-residents lately. There's a lot of talk about how, Idaho's eventually just going to go to a draw system like everybody else, and that's a pretty touchy subject. What are your thoughts on that?
As far as a draw system like we already have, I guess if I realize that it's not the non-resident hunters that are overcrowding. That's the same amount. I don't even know when it was 96 or wasn't it when that number was set?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But they weren't selling out back then, where now they sell out, and that's because I used to think that, I don't know why everybody's complaining about non-residents when it's the same amount of tags, but that's what I figured it out. Or I was told that's what it is the difference is they were selling out like in the late 90s, and then they stopped selling out for a long time, and like 5 years ago the non-resident tags started selling out again. Ho, ho, ho! Are you guys thinking about getting some hunting gear for Christmas, whether it's for you, where you're going to be your own Santa Claus, or do you have a hunter in mind that you want to get some hunting gear for? Well, let me just tell you a couple of sponsors that we have here on the show that'll save you a little bit of money. And the first one being Hoffman Boots. My favorite go-to boot company out there is Hoffman. And let me tell you something. you are not chinsing out by getting you a set of Hoffman boots. I run the Explorers in the 8-inch. You can also get the 6-inch. You can get the Summit boots, which are really badass. And these boots, I've trusted these boots for years. This is not some new thing for me. I love my Hoffman boots. I've had all the big name brands of boots out there, and I can promise you that I will never buy anything but Hoffman again. Save you a little bit of money, because the Hoffmans aren't quite as expensive, but yet don't let that take away from the quality of these boots. They will last a long time, and they are worth every cent. And to make it even sweeter for you this holiday season, if you use the promo code Huntsman15, all caps lock, that's going to save you 15% at checkout. Great boots, great warranty, great product. Check it out at hoffmanboots.com. Moving right into the Scree Gear. Guys, you know I've run Scree Gear for a while now. If you listen to this show, I'm a big fan of Scree. This is high-performance hunting attire and gear. It's scientifically tested camo patterns, and it's backed by a great company. They named the company after Scree Rock, and they changed the spelling on it. You know that shale rock kind of stuff you find at the bottom of base cliffs? That's where they got the name. And it's a Western hunting company. And here's what's cool right now. So they've got two patterns, and one of their patterns is called the Mountain Stealth, and that pattern is getting discontinued, much to my dismay, because that's what I run. I like the Mountain Stealth. It's a lot better for most of the terrain that I hunt in, but they are having they're doing away with it, so they've got a huge deal going on. It's like 30% off of the Mountain Stealth Scree Gear. So if you have the inclination to get outfitted for new camo for next year, go to screegear.com and check out anything in the Mountain Stealth. I highly recommend the Elite Starter Bundle. It's probably the best bang for your buck. And if you get it in the Mountain Stealth, I think that's going to run to like the last day of September. I've got September on my mind. I'm telling you right now. Last day of December, that 30% off is going to be taking place. So go check it out at screegear.com. Now, if you do use the Mountain Stealth, that is going to be a better discount than what my promo code can offer you. But I would ask, please mention in the comments somewhere that you did hear that at the Western Huntsman on the show. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart when you do that. And if you're not using that and you need a promo code because you're going to get the other stuff, then use promo code The Western Huntsman, and that's going to save you 15% off and free shipping. It's a great deal, and you're going to love your Scree Gear. Last but not least is Phelps Game Calls. Phelps Game Calls is the go-to call company for the Western Huntsman, whether we're talking deer, bear, and especially elk. Phelps Game Call, those calls have put down more elk than the plague. And you guys, if you follow along with the whole brand of Phelps, it's a wonderful company story filled with great people. They do excellent products, excellent customer service, great warranties, great company. You just can't go wrong. Go to Phelps.com, use promo code Huntsman10, and save 10% off your Phelps calls for next season. It's coming up. I know we're in Christmas right now. It's Christmas, but September's going to be here before you know it. So go check it out at Phelps.com. Let's get back to the episode, guys. Thanks a bunch. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, when I first started buying, and I totally agree. When I first started coming up here and hunting, they couldn't give away their tags.
Yeah.
Right. And you could buy a second one at a reduced price. Mm-hmm. And first started out, I think it was elk and then deer, or whichever way it was. And then now, of course, the fiasco they just had December 1st. I think everything sold out in that day.
Yeah, I think it did too. I think the only, well, and I could be wrong, but I think the only holdout was the Panhandle unit, and where I think that it took 48 hours and it sold out. Other than that, I think everything sold out super quick.
Yeah, and it's just amazing how fast it went, because my son, he lives in Nevada. He comes up and hunts with me, mm-hmm. and so he likes to be able to get a tag. It's not all non-residents are coming from, Iowa or whatever. A lot of them there's a lot of them are family and stuff that come up to hunt with us, and it was tough. He didn't get an elk tag. He did get a deer tag. So
it's a frustrating conversation because I see both sides of it. I have definitely been frustrated with out-of-staters, right? But I'm
Oh, yeah.
also an out-of-stater in all the other states, and I like to go out of state and hunt. And so it's kind of this thing where it is frustrating sometimes to see the amount of non-residents in one area, but really, if somebody asked me what the biggest problem is from my perspective in the state of Idaho, is not non-residents. It's we've had a huge influx of resident hunters, and there's a lot of them. A lot of them are like these adult onset hunters, and I'm glad they're here, and I'm glad they're involved in hunting. But I feel like that in a lot of cases, that's what's jamming up a lot of these units, with the exception of a few down south in central Idaho and down south. There's a couple of units in particular that get pretty hammered by non-residents. But like up in my neck of the woods, we get a lot of non-residents coming from the Spokane area because it's a big metro area, and the seasons are a lot more favorable to archery elk hunters to come over and get an Idaho tag and come on over here and hunt. And so we see that, but it's not like those few specific units where I feel like the biggest influx in hunting populations in the state of Idaho is definitely residents. We've got a ton of new residents. When I first moved to Idaho, there weren't even 1 million people in the state of Idaho, and I aren't we like hitting 2 million people like right now?
Yeah.
We're scratching that.
I think I was listening to Randy Newberg the other day. I think he said Idaho is like 80%.
Yeah.
Since 1990 or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, and I saw that in Utah too. Utah, I remember as a kid, we were the only ones on the mountain, and it's not a wildly popular state for non-residents to go to, but we did see a huge influx of Californians moving into Utah. And by the time I was a teenager, man, you had to like wear a flak jacket and a Kevlar helmet to go deer hunting because bullets were flying everywhere.
Oh yeah, I remember as a kid, everybody hunted, right? So and tag, you just went down to the hardware store and bought your tag.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, and so I see hunting pressure starting now like it was then. I mean, it was a lot of people out. I mean, everybody was in the hills.
Yeah.
But it was kind of I don't think the expectations, were the same, because we just went out and you hoped to find a deer, and if you did, then you got lucky. If not, then you had a good time, and that's still my motto, right?
Yeah. Still kind of a pastime.
Yeah. So it took a dip, I think, for a long time, and now it's becoming, especially in the western states, all the social media and the YouTube, the Born and Raised and all those guys, and has really made, and I'm not blaming it on them, but they've really made it visible.
I am. It's Trent's fault.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I blame everything on Randy Bird. Because
I like that policy.
My hunting hole got blown up this year, and I've seen one person in 6 or 7 years, and it turned into a Walmart parking lot. And it's like, that's Randy Newberg's fault. All his e-scouting stuff, all his, and email now.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something to it. That's why on this show I'm super careful about, I'm very, very generalized when I talk about locations. Whether here or elsewhere. But getting back to that kind of the tag draw conversation, and the versus OTC, it is a hot topic, like I said, and I guess from my perspective, I want to caution people that have never lived in a state where it's all draw. It does make it makes it very difficult when you're passionate about hunting and you want to be out there every year, which what hunter doesn't? Like, I'm always blown away. You got these dudes that live, these folks that live like maybe back east, but they're way into elk hunting, and they only do it once every 5 years or once every 10 years. I can't live like that. I need to be out in the elk woods every year. I live for that. You know what I mean? And so when, for example, I lived in Utah for a spell so I moved to Idaho, And then after the service, and then I moved back to Utah. I took a job down in kind of the Salt Lake area for a few years. My wife and I hated it, so we came back up. And it's not that we hated Utah, but I hated the hunting seasons and this weird, overly complicated draw where I can get an OTC tag for a spike bull, but a general any season bull was like this draw. And the deer, you couldn't put in with a bunch of buddies and go to deer camp anymore because everybody had to draw the tag unless you wanted to go to this northern unit where there were no deer left. And, it was just chaos. And I told my wife I took a lesser job back in Idaho because the hunting is just a lot more favorable because I can just go to Walmart and grab a tag. And I've got lots of time, lots of game, lots of area, lots of public land, and we can hunt and we can live that way. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And, I've got to admit that, that had a lot to do with my decision, to finally take the plunge and say, okay, we're in Idaho. I mean, after not draw, because after the first 3 years I drew a cow tag, they changed the rules to where you could put in for both. And now everybody wanted a cow tag, and then I went 2 years without drawing a cow tag. Well, I was hunting here at the same, if I didn't draw a tag, sure, I'll come here. But it's just like, why am I doing this? Right? It took me 6 years to draw a bull tag, and I got burned out by a fire, the fourth day. And so, and then you have to wait 7 years, no matter what, right? And it's like, why am I doing this? My passion is, archery hunting, elk hunting, deer hunting, antelope hunting, but mostly elk hunting. And this is the perfect place for it. And I think with what you're saying about, a draw system in Idaho, I don't see how we're going to get out of some sort of restrictions somewhere down the line, at least in certain areas, from the resident influx.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it only is common sense that something's going to have to change at some point. But if we could push the OTC tags, as available and as widespread as the units are, the freedom that we have in Idaho to hunt is such a foundational part of being an Idahoan. I'd hate to see that change.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks take it for granted what we have.
I do too.
Coming from a state that, and not only that, California, the areas I live were draw only, and shoot, I'm looking at, 30-inch mule deer out my window, and I can't hunt them, right? So I'm getting out of there. In Nevada, you wait for these tags, and then you got to wait all these waiting periods, like antelope's 3 years or whatever it is. But mule deer, you can go every year. But I think we take it for granted what we have here, and you see all this. On social media, it's like as soon as the tags come out and, as the draw comes out, we got to go to a draw system. We need points.
Yeah.
And I really caution people on it, being careful what you wish for. Because once you get in that, there's no getting out that I can see. And it just seems to me that, it takes more and more and more points to get, let some of these premium units, especially, if they can push them through fast enough, like antelope in Nevada is not too bad. 3-4 years after your waiting period, you can usually draw one. But some of those elk units are just ridiculous, and of course they don't have the resource we have. But still, that it's because they look at Colorado, all these other states that do the same thing. It's just a ridiculous mess, and I see all these. And in Nevada, when the tags come out, right, you hear the opposite, crying, right? It's like, well, we got to get rid of this system. It's terrible.
Yeah, that's how it was in Utah. Everybody was complaining about the system there.
Yeah,
and I was one of them. I'd complain about it every freaking year. It's like this is ridiculous. I can't get a tag in the unit that. So my family has a ranch in Utah, in central Utah. And there's monster mule deer on this thing, and just in the foothills right off the property line there. There's just these monster mule deer that run through this country, and I could never get a tag for it. I never, and it's not like it's some major premium unit. It's just there were these, people from coming up from like Texas and Florida and all these other states that could go hunt around our ranch, but I couldn't because that tag was so difficult to get. And then the other side, you can get a tag, but none of your buddies could, so you were hunting alone. That's how I became a solo hunter. And so.
A lot of it here too,
yeah. And so it's a mess, and I think you're right. You hit kind of the nail on the head there when you said that a lot of people maybe take advantage of it, or they take it for granted, not take advantage. They take it for granted, and because maybe they've never lived somewhere where it was a different system, and it's a very difficult pill to swallow when you have to make hard decisions about what species you're going to hunt, what unit you're going to hunt. Everything's so restricted, and honestly, I just like that. I want nothing to do with it personally, and so I'm hoping things can stay the way they are for a while in terms of how residents can get tags, because it's ideal. I'm telling you guys, if you haven't lived anywhere else, it's ideal here.
Yeah, this is the perfect place. And I could see why they did what they did with the non-residents, right? Spread them out.
Yeah.
I understand. I completely agree with that. And I completely understand. Now, what the areas I hunt hasn't ever been an issue, but I realize it has been in other places. Mm-hmm. And so, the redistribution of them, I totally get, but I'm just hoping that for residents that we can hang on to what we have for as long as we can, because it really is, the best deal out there. There's not very many places like that out there that we can just go and buy a tag pretty much. And you can hunt elk every year, no matter what, mm-hmm. if you want to hunt elk.
Yep, and deer.
And deer.
Yep, yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. And the other thing that makes Idaho so great is we're like 63% public land. And so there are places, and I know in the unit that I elk hunt, it can, there in one part of that unit specifically, people talk about overcrowding and all that kind of stuff. It does get crowded in this particular section of this unit, but I'm telling you right now, most of those people don't get off the road, and that's where you'll find elk away from the road. Not that I think you have to go, into the back country 10 miles or anything like that. It's not like that. But that's a huge issue. Most of these hunters they're road hunters. They're driving around. They'll hike for 100 yards up on a hill and sit in glass, but they don't leave. They don't get off the roads they don't get off their ATVs. They don't travel into the woods. And where I started my elk hunt this year, there was camps everywhere, and I was a little concerned. We set up camp, and I'm like kind of driving around doing some scouting, and I'm like, man, there is a lot of people up here this year. I've never seen it this crowded, and it had been like that all summer too. We go up there and camp in the summer to mess around on the river and whatever, and it was more crowded ever, and it's because of COVID-19, Oh yeah. I've got my brother-in-law works in the RV industry, and he's like, yep, this year they've sold like double the RVs than they do in their best years in the past, because nobody's taking vacations. They're buying RVs and going camping or whatever. So anyways, the point being, as crowded as it was, I found myself with basins all to myself many times, because I would just get away from the road. And so that, I don't care who's camped down low. As long as when I'm up in elk country, it's not getting bombarded. So public lands. Go ahead.
Oh no, I think you brought up a really good point about it's not just the influx of hunters. We've had a huge influx of recreational users.
Yep.
They're just riding dirt bikes, and I've got cameras out in the backcountry during the summer and on Forest Service trails, and there was trail runners and motorcycles you usually see, but just all the people that were miles back in there that I had not seen before, and that has an effect,
Definitely. Yeah, that's I was talking to somebody on the show, and they were saying that basically that's what a lot of the wildlife biologists say is one of the biggest detriments to our wildlife in terms of where they migrate, how they pattern, where they feed, where they bed, all that kind of stuff. The biggest disruption is recreational users. The people that are going out backpacking, they're not hunting, but they're out there all year long, and it's creating issues for the wildlife. I don't know. I wish I was a scientist so I could study this stuff as a job.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I'm not.
But to your point though, even though that those people are out there, the hunters are out there and everything, there are places you can find, not usually very far off the road. I don't go as far as I used to go when I'm actually hunting elk. I'll scout elk way back in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw you. You were posting pictures of 10 miles back off the road.
Yeah, but when it actually comes, when I'm solo hunting and I'm 61 years old, I have to pick my battles, mm-hmm. and fortunately I've been able to find, like you said, those basins and stuff that even though there's people all around, you just find they're there,
So you brought up a good point there. What, with your age and your experience with hunting, you went out on that first hunting trip when you were 15 on horseback with your neighbor. What do you see as the biggest change to hunting? And not like an easy one like social media. Technology aside, what do you think has changed most drastically since you started hunting to now?
Oh boy,
it's a loaded question, right?
Yeah, it is a loaded question. Well, I'll just have to go with, and I'm not going to blame social media or anything for this or whatever, but back when I was younger, we'd go hunting and there, it seems like all the bars had a big buck contest, right? Mm-hmm. And you'd see, if somebody happened, and there was the same people that seemed to get really nice bucks, year after year, and they had their little spot, but anybody could put in, could sign up for the big buck contest. It was just fun, right?
Down at the bar.
Yep, down at the bar, and the pictures were on the walls and that stuff, and nobody. I mean, you really scored a buck by its width. Just basically that was it.
Say that one more time.
Basically, the only scoring that I recall was how wide it was.
Yeah, right. I remember those days. I actually remember those days. I remember. I used to think that when everybody that scores their mule deer, especially, I always used to look at that as that was an East Coast, Midwest whitetail thing. All we talked about was the width of the antler. So it's funny you brought that up because I was thinking about that the other day. Interesting.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I have an incoming call there, but so now, I mean, back then, so man, if you got a 30-inch buck, you got a giant buck, 28-inch buck, mm-hmm. Or a 4-point. A 4-point was a big buck. It didn't matter what kind of 4-point it was, you got a 4-point, and that's how it was. There was none of this. Well, I'm gonna let him grow another year, or I'm going to pass on him. If you saw a nice, decent buck, that's what you shot if you could.
Yeah.
And you were proud of it. And I just see it seems to be, I'm around a lot of people that count every centimeter, they count every inch. And it's that is what's so important to them. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against it. Any way anybody hunts, that is legal and ethical, I have no problem with.
Yeah.
Not at all. But to me, it just seems to be a trend. It's all about
your points. Who's the biggest, baddest? Who's got the
biggest
buck?
We all like to shoot a big bull or a big buck or whatever. But it just seems like I'm just old timer. To me, it's the experience, and I'm just so blessed to be able to go.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've never scored a buck. I've never scored anything, especially. I've shot some decent mule deer, and especially back in the days before there was social media. And I've told this story before on the show. I've got my biggest mule deer buck I've ever taken. I didn't even take like a grip and grin kind of picture with it. I killed it and threw it in the truck and that was it, you know. But that was before all the social media stuff. I think there was MySpace back then. Do you remember MySpace?
I do remember MySpace. I had a MySpace account when it came out.
Yeah, I did too for the band. I had it for the band. Yeah.
What happened to them?
I don't know. I think Facebook kind of kicked their ass and they dissipated into the into the universe. And so, no, I agree. That's I'm getting a kick out of the just measuring the width thing, because that was how we did it when growing up, and that was it. I shot a 24-inch buck or a 32-inch buck, and I remember 32 inches. This one guy, it was in high school, and his dad shot a 32-inch buck, and I remember begging him to let me come see this buck because I'd never seen a 32-inch wide buck, you know, and so it was just cool. Nobody talked about score and not like you said, I'm not against people scoring. I'm just not going to do it because that's not what my goal is. But other people, that's a priority, and that's totally fine. You know, I don't know. It's not that important to me. But getting out there and getting something down, getting a tag notch, getting that meat in the freezer, that's what my priority is. And I do worry with the huge influx of residents and the way that people are talking these days, that this tag discussion and draw discussion is going to lead to less opportunities, because that's my experience with it in other states, you know. And so interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot of people think it's Amazon, right? You just you should go out there and be able to get what you want, you know. And it's not like that. It never has really been. Yeah, there's been better eras than others, and for sure. And the populations go up and down. The age class goes up and down. And of course, now we got wolves, and we can go on that rabbit hole. But
more so with wolves, what I would say is what's threatening to our mule deer right now is going to be the fact of what we were just talking about. People being so hyper-focused on scoring their bucks that they're looking for these huge bucks in areas where there's whitetail and mule deer. And I know people might roll their eyes when I talk about this, but in those areas where the whitetail and the mule deer come together, the research is there. The research is done. We need to leave those big mature bucks alone. Like, don't shoot those ones. Those are the ones protecting the mule deer does from the whitetail bucks that are coming in and want to breed everything that they can find. And that's not my opinion. That's from a guy that's been researching this since the 1960s, you know. And so that is a whole other discussion that I know if I took like a super hard stance on that, would get a lot of hunters super fired up. You know what I mean? Because I am a firm believer in Dr. Valerius Geist and his research and his, basically what he came up with was that's how they rehabilitated these mule deer herds in British Columbia, was leaving those big bucks alone. So a lot of people talk about point restrictions. Oh, only shoot a 3-point or better. I'm of the opinion of point restrictions in the opposite direction. Man, that was a tongue twister for me. Sorry about that. 3-point or less. Shoot those ones. Don't shoot those big ones. And I'm speaking only in areas where mule deer and whitetail deer coexist. I'm not talking about some of those southern units in Idaho and some of those areas in Wyoming and Utah where there's only mule deer. That's negated the point at that point. But where these whitetail are coming together with a mule deer, I have a strong opinion on that. And I have a strong opinion on shooting mule deer does in those areas. And I took some flack for saying that a couple episodes back, but I'll take it again. I have a strong opinion on that.
Yeah, and that conversation with Dr. Geist really enlightened me, because I have seen the influx, and I have nothing against whitetails, but I've seen the influx of whitetails in mule deer country, and the number of whitetails increase while the number of mule deer in my layman's eyes, seems to have decreased.
No, that's what it was for me, just layman's eyes noticing that exact thing, like you said. But then I had this guy, this Dr. Geist, come on the show and talk about why that happens and how to prevent it. And nobody wants to listen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's, I could see where that would be hard to swallow for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Not the data, but just because that would affect our hunts, right? That would affect us.
It's going to affect their social media, their Instagram likes, because the bucks they're shooting aren't monsters.
You don't have to worry about me shooting them big bucks.
Me either, man. No, that's. So you're more of a mule deer guy. Have you ever gone whitetail hunting?
I have. My son, when he was stationed back east, he went to boot camp back east, but he went to college back east, and so he was hunting whitetails and all that kind of stuff, and so I thought, well, you've seen all those shows, right? The guy gets up in a blind and he sits there and waits on his food plot, and nothing against that either, right? That is probably more people do that than we can even imagine of us being elk hunters.
More people do that than elk hunting, yeah, like you said.
Oh yeah, and so I have nothing against it, but it was just like I had this thing of, it's like, wow, I really didn't have any kind of interest in whitetails, but hang on a second. Scratch. But then I started hunting central Idaho, and then lo and behold, there's whitetails. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, I've never shot a whitetail with my bow. I've shot blacktail, mule deer, whatever. I haven't shot blacktail with my bow. I've only shot with my rifle. That's on the list. But I'd never shot a whitetail, so I made it my point that year to shoot a whitetail with my bow, and I did, and it was a doe, but that hide is on my table in front of me right now, mm-hmm. and that was really cool. I missed the chance at a really nice whitetail buck, but that was.
Did you tan the hide yourself?
No, I sent it off to be tanned.
I'm thinking about starting to do that again. I haven't done that in years.
Yeah, my son did. Yeah, my son was doing it for me. He was tanning my elk hides, my antelope hides, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of work for him, and it's like my taxidermist does it for $125. So.
Oh, that's a pretty good deal. Yeah, that's been my hesitation. I haven't done it. I saved a deer hide a few weeks ago and left it kind of out in my yard there to hang for a minute. And I was gonna try to tan this thing out, and the freaking coyotes came in and drug it off that night. So it's gone. Got ripped apart. I found pieces of it. I'm gonna sauce those bastards. They keep coming onto my I think they're after my cats. So. Oh yeah. Anyway, yeah. So way to get me thrown off, man.
Oh yeah. So the wrong guy. You want to stay on track.
No, I was way, well, I still am way into mule deer. I love mule deer hunting, and I love the country they live in. I love the way that they present themselves. There's just something super majestic about a big, mature mule deer buck. But I have just been this mountain whitetail hunting, not sitting over a food plot, on your farm in, Tennessee or something like that, where these bucks never leave, and they have what seems to be a much smaller range. I've been way into these whitetails that live in the mountains, and they got to deal with wolves and bears and even coyotes and this western mountain whitetail hunting thing. It's a whole different ballgame, and it's pretty addicting. It's been fun.
Yeah, and I've been following along, and it's got me intrigued on the mountain whitetails,
Yeah, it's something else. It is something else.
Something I don't have to think about,
They're crazy.
Except all that snow.
Yeah, the snow part sucks.
Yeah. My wife has a elk tag that reopened on the 1st of December, and it's like it's archery, and it's like, well, maybe
I'm braving it. I'm braving it, man. This late season archery opens on the 10th for me, and I have like 3 different areas plotted out, ready to go. And I'm actually, I just started kind of packing for it because actually it's cool. It's a cool story. Idaho Pack Company, Initial Ascent, selected me to be one of their hunters for their the Brotherhood of the Traveling Pack. And so now I'm switching everything over from the pack that I usually use to this pack to try it out, And I've got that almost done. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting because I've never hunted elk this late in the game, and we are slated to start snowing tomorrow. And it's going to snow pretty much based on my app on my phone the whole time I'm out there. And it's going to be interesting. We'll see how it goes, man.
Well, hopefully it gives some sort of predictability to it.
Yeah, I feel like
I don't know how they migrate, their migration habits up there and stuff. But
I don't think it's too much different than the areas you hunt, other than I don't think they go as far. I guess I should say I don't know if you're talking about summer versus winter range, or if you're talking about like their day-to-day migrating from top of the hill down to the lower areas to feed.
More like summer versus winter.
Oh,
range.
yeah. They don't go nearly as far as they do down south. There's just not a lot of necessity for it, and I would argue that a lot of the times the bulls don't move at all. That's going to be one of the things. I might need to borrow. If anybody's listening and has a snowmobile I could borrow, let me know. Give me your rental prices and let me know, because I don't have one.
There you go.
Yeah, need one. But that was, you got that elk. I wanted to ask you about that, the elk you got this year, and what was that? Was it coyotes that came and got the back end of that thing?
I'm not. I know it was. I'm reasonably sure it was not wolves, because I think they would eat the whole thing.
I do too. I feel like it somebody, when you posted that, somebody was like asking about wolves, and I was like, I don't think so. They would have shredded that thing.
My guess, it was a coyote or bear.
Yeah.
I was sleeping within 100 yards of it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, because I had shot it in the evening, and there was a lot of elk in there when I shot it, and they all went out the same trail, and just wiped out the blood trail. Wow. And so I followed it as far as I could, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to stomp all over everything here. So I backed out and just camped right there, and first light I went up and I found it. It was already like that.
Yeah, they just ate the one, like a whole back quarter, it looked like, huh?
Yeah, well, they ate off of both hindquarters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they ate the whole rear end off of it.
Huh.
And it was so hot. And it was a race.
Yeah.
I deliberately went after elk lower, and a cow specifically, because the previous year when I shot my bull way in the back, it took me 3 days to get it out by myself. And this year I decided I'm going to get, and it's all, every year is a clean slate, right? Mm-hmm. You don't even know if you're going to get an opportunity, but if I was hoping to get an opportunity a little closer and a little lighter,
yeah.
And it worked out good that way. It was just a struggle with the heat. It was 98 degrees up there on that hill.
Oh, jeez.
And so it was everything I could do to get it off the mountain. But it worked out. It's a great season.
And then you kind of turned the season into your son got a stud of a bull.
Oh, that was so cool.
Did you guys call that? You called him in, right?
Yeah, I called him in. So to kind of give you the story, 2017. This is a completely different unit than I'm hunting. So we are in a different elk zone. And in 2017, I went over, I had that tag, and he had that tag. And so I called in a really nice bull for him. And something happened when he shot, and the arrow hit the string hit his sleeve or something, and he got like an inch penetration, and the arrow fell out. And so ever since then, it was like been on this mission. And so this year was the first chance we really got to do it again in there, and that first bull came in screaming and fighting and wanting to, raking and, classic, like I seen on TV, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, this year was a weird year, all right. Where I was at, where I shot my elk, the bulls were bugling and screaming. I had pictures of bulls breeding cows on the 2nd of September,
mm-hmm.
and then where we were in that other part in central Idaho, they weren't making a sound. I happened to know the area. That's where I shot a cow in 2017, and we went in there, and the trail looked good, so we just sat there and cold called. I cold called, and I don't know how many hours we waited, and we finally got a chuckle out of him, and that was all it took. Once we knew he was there, we just did the elk nut slow play.
Oh, you did the you did the slow play?
Well, basically the slow play. Yeah, I basically did the cow, the bull tending a cow
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
scenario, and I did it for like 3 or 4 different times. We finally stopped, went down the hill, took a nap, came back, and the second time it worked, and he came in silent as could be. He did not make a peep, and you could hear some cows starting to talk up there. And my son was looking in that direction, and he looked out of the corner of his eye, and here's this bull looking down the hill where I'm at, and amazingly, the bull let him draw and shoot. So
wow,
yeah,
so he just came in quiet.
Totally quiet. The only thing we heard out of that bull all day was one chuckle.
Wow.
And that was it. And so it's, it wasn't the screaming fighting thing or either, but it was equally as effective.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. My playbook is long, and I use it.
Yeah, I've tried the slow play a few times. I didn't have as much success. I almost got one that way. But I've had all sorts of mishaps, man, in September, crazy stuff. But I want to I know we're going a little long here. These things, I never talk about what I want to talk about, and all of a sudden the hour's up. And so I kind of want to wrap this up by you have a really good perspective. You've had a lot of hunting success. You've been out, you've hunted multiple different states. You've notched tags on multiple different species in multiple different units in, again, multiple different states. So you've got a lot of experience. What do you tell people that are just getting into hunting? Adult onset or kids or somebody that's just kind of getting into hunting? Do you have like your action-packed, top 3 pieces of advice or something like that you could offer those people?
Well, I'll use elk hunting because it's probably the last thing that I started hunting. Okay. And when I first started elk hunting, I didn't know anything about elk, right? I didn't know anything about it, and it was in Nevada, and it was the whole bugling bull and all that kind of stuff that was not even part of that scenario. But once I got the fever, and I got it. I went to school, right? I knew I did not know enough. As far as the physical part is very important. The knowing the language is very important. But going to school, getting knowledge, like your school of September, and my first one was row hunting resources and elk 101. Those were I just absorbed that stuff. And talk to people who are successful that want to share. I mean, there are, you get so much negative stuff on social media, but there are people that will help.
Yeah, in person is a lot different than like when somebody asks about, hey, what caliber do I use for elk? That famous question that gets so much slobbering, arguing, blah, blah, blah on Facebook, right? You ask that same question to somebody in person that has a lot of experience, they will talk your ear off.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I learned, and And even back when I very first started, I hunting when I was, 14, 15 years old and trapping, I didn't know what I was doing, but I read about it, the resources that I had at the time. And that's how it got me started, and just have the passion. You have to, get out there. Don't take no for an answer. Don't, when you think you need, you should go home and you miss everybody and they miss you. It's like, well, that's probably the day that could be the day you get one.
True.
Just, be, and of course you have to, be cognizant of the realities of that too. But, just don't give up. It doesn't have to be all over that next ridge necessarily. Know your limitations, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm. If
you go back in there by yourself and you kill one, can you get it out? And not have a bunch of spoiled meat. That's a thing that I've had to learn. Now I've been lucky, but I pushed that envelope pretty far a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I would say hunting knowledge would be number one.
Like knowledge of the animal, knowledge of hunting, knowledge
animal
of
behavior. Yeah, animal behavior. Knowledge of woodsmanship and stuff like that. Can you shoot an elk at dark and stay there on the mountain with it, next to it or on that trail until daylight when you can find it?
Yeah.
That, I kind of had to prove that to myself this year because I was like, I didn't want to stay up there.
I know. I was worried about that when I'm base camped with the whole family and they're down at the trailer at camp, and if I'm way back there, I'd stay on, and I'm prepared. I'm ready to stay on the mountain, but like I have no way of letting my wife know that now I didn't fall and break my ankle, or I didn't get my butt handed to me by a grizzly bear. I'm just camped on the meat, and that's a challenge too, because I know a lot of people deal with that. But no, that's great advice. That's really.
And I say also.
Go ahead.
Oh, I say also enjoy yourself.
Man, that's great. That's a great one. A lot of people take it way too serious, huh?
Yeah, have reasonable expectations. It's not always going to work out. 2018, I had 3 elk tags in 2 different states, and I didn't punch one tag, but I had a good time.
Yeah.
And so it's not always about that kind of success. And and know what you want. Do you want that? Do you want that big bull? Or do you want? Or are you okay with elk meat in your freezer? To me, my trophy room's my freezer, right? Mm-hmm. So, are you okay with that, or do you want something else? Do you want, do you want that hunt, and know that going into it, and just enjoy yourself, man. That's been the secret for me. When I'm out there, I'm having a good time.
That's fantastic advice. The good time, the having a good time, having fun. That I don't think that gets talked about enough. We could do a whole podcast on that.
Oh yeah.
I could tell stories of when I figure out that I'm calling in another hunter and it's not a bull elk. I'll start playing "Mary Had a Little Lamb" on the bugle, and it's fun, man. It is so much fun. And sometimes they get pissed, and other times I could hear them down there laughing. Or one guy, I'm pretty sure he was playing "Back in Black" back to me, but I'm not totally sure. He wasn't very good at it, but just having fun and lightening it up, The
most fun I had this year was on my son's hunt and my wife's hunt, and I wasn't even a hunter.
Yeah. Your wife got a pretty nice buck, didn't she?
No, she got a doe.
Was it a doe?
She got her first archery animal of any kind. And
that's cool.
This year, and and that's, I wanted that experience for her. I wanted that experience for my son, and to me that made my whole season, and that was so much fun. And that's what hunting's about for me. And
sure.
Whether I tagged or elk or deer or whatever, that was so much fun, and I think that's the takeoff from that is just enjoy yourself, even if it's helping somebody else. Yeah. You get an opportunity to go with somebody else, even if you don't have a tag.
You can learn a lot. I love, and I'm 90% solo all the time, but I love going with people that I've never been hunting with, just to kind of watch them. And even if I'm like
what I would consider maybe a better hunter or more experienced hunter, even in those cases, I learn a lot from going with these guys. And I think that people, they put themselves in this like level, like they're on this level of hunting. I'm an advanced hunter, or I'm an intermediate hunter, and this other person I can't learn from them, kind of thing. And that is, I'd love to go hunting with you. I feel like I'd pick up all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, we'd have a ball.
We would have a ball. We would have a
and
ball.
I'd give it my best Doug Flutie.
Oh.
And
I love Doug Flutie. He comes up all the time on the show.
Yeah, man. Can't wait to kick that one out this week.
Yeah, that's coming out tomorrow.
Well,
there's no Doug Flutie does not make an appearance on that one, but we do talk about him.
Yeah, so you got Joe and Chris and Dirk, right?
Yep. It's and now I can actually say it, even though we're recording, but that it is the panel series. So all winter, once a month, I'm going to be having a panel discussion with multiple hunters all on at once to talk about different things, and this one happens to be the elk hunting panel. And so, yeah, we had that one come out, and it's pretty fun.
That was awesome. I was actually talking to Joe today.
Oh, were you?
And he called, and he said that, he always wanted to have the name Huntsman for his last name. but when he went to change his name, there was some dude in North Idaho who already had it.
That's right, Joe. You got to lose the Italian name for that one.
That's right. You really said
that. Joe's one of my favorite people. He's a great guy down there at the Elk Bros, Blue Collar Elk Hunting Academy.
Oh yeah.
Yep, great stuff.
You turned me on. See, you guys, and then I learned a lot from your podcast, because that's how I picked up Elk Bros, right? I was listening to Joe, and it's like, oh, I got to check that one out.
Yeah, it's a good program too. And you're not learning from me; it's the guests I have on that are just like, they're so much fun to listen to too. Just great personalities, and that's part. I just love doing this podcast because I get to talk to people like you and all those guys and make new friends with you and like we were saying, Joe down at Elk Bros and Dirk and all these guys. It's a lot of fun. It's a hoot, and I learn a lot. I'm telling you, it's like if I was only doing this for selfish reasons, the selfish reason for me would be that I learn more about hunting being a host of a hunting podcast than I ever have with any other type kind of learning education I found elsewhere. So it's awesome.
That's the ticket right there. You got best of both worlds.
Yeah. So, well, cool, Mike.
How much knowledge I've passed on, but
no, it's good. We actually should get you back on. There's a couple of pointed topics. In fact, I was hoping to maybe get you on for one of these elk panels coming up. So let's keep in touch on that and see if we can't get you back on in the future. I think it'd be fun. Hopefully we can get the audio worked out, because I can only do that on that one thing.
In the meantime, I shall try to improve that.
Well, last time it was my fault though. My internet was totally dead. Like I was blaming it on the snowstorm, which usually that is a pretty bad thing. But no, it was actually my internet was flat out off. It was down. So thanks to my kids. But anyway, that's what happens.
Yep.
We rolled. We made it happen. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, I am so happy to be here.
And like I said, we're going to do this again. And let's give everybody your Instagram handle. You're archery43, right?
Yeah, it's archery.43.
What does the 43 signify?
43rd state.
43rd state. I like it. Okay, cool. See, I learn something every time.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something, and I hope I had that right, but I was trying to think of something, semi-original, right? And it's like, well, I looked at, what state is Idaho? Well, it's 43rd state. Okay, archery.43.
I like it. That's perfect. So everybody check out Mike's Instagram. It's actually a pretty good Instagram. Good pictures. You're a super busy guy. You're up there spending a lot of time. I wish you had time to be trapping right now, because I'd love to follow along with that. But someday.
Yeah, I just checked out a property today that I just got permission to trap, so I'll be
cool.
working that here soon, and looking forward to bear season, and
awesome.
And that's next.
All right, Mike. Well, thanks again for joining me. Archery.43 on Instagram, Michael Bozarth. And we're going to get you back on the show. Thanks a bunch, man.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.